hello everyone. I couldn't actually be bothered to walk all the way off in order to come and do a big entrance, so I just kind of stood over on the side. Thanks for coming to my talk today, which is about DevOps culture. Now, I'm sure everyone here is working somewhere where there are no problems, everything's fine, change is easy. Like, if you need a tool, you can just get it. If you want to use particular technology, it's not a problem. But there's a chance that some of you are working somewhere where things are a little bit harder. So that's what I'm hoping to talk through today, is what do you do when you're working somewhere that isn't zipping along, and you're not in charge, so you can't just change the culture, right? And the funny thing is, even if you are in charge, you can't really change the culture that easily either. But this is kind of like the bottom-up version. So what do you do when your boots are on the ground? So, quick bit about me. My name is Steve. I'm the principal DevOps researcher at Octopus Deploy. And I've got loads of things to promote. There they all are, but most of these are free, so you can just grab them. So feel free. We have some of this stuff as well in our booth, so come and say hi, and we'll give you some of this stuff. But I'm also a member of the DORA Community, which is a community around the state of DevOps research, where we've been looking into things like, how does culture affect your ability to deliver software? And how does that make your organization more successful? So that's why I'm talking on the subject today and bringing some of that along with me. So DevOps kind of has three versions. And the first version is really simple, which is developers and operations just collaborate more. That's really easy. And the slightly more complex version is you need to align their goals so that they can collaborate without tripping over each other, having conflicts in goals, like developers need to deliver more often. The ops teams want things to be more reliable, which means they want change to be less often. So you have to give them a goal that means that they can come together. But the interesting thing about DevOps is the technical stuff, although it's quite difficult sometimes, is much easier than the human stuff, right? It's like, it's much easier to do test automation than it is to get people working really well together. So that's the problem that we're going to try and tackle. So Ron Westrom did a big study a while ago about organizational culture, and he found that you could pretty much categorize all organizations into three different types of culture. One of them is pathological. Hopefully none of you will recognize this description. But in a pathological culture, like, you're going to get it. If something goes wrong, someone's going to get booted out the door, right? It's like bad news. If you turn up and say, I'm worried that this near miss is going to turn into a really bad event, they're like, you're in trouble for even raising that there could be a problem, right? So everyone just keeps really quiet. You never tell anyone if you think that there's a problem because you get the blame for finding it. So it's bad news. That's a pathological culture. Hopefully none of you know that one. The bureaucratic culture is a lot more common. And this is where just things are a little bit process-driven. So it's kind of checklists. It's very fair because they'll make sure that they blame the right person, whereas a pathological culture doesn't care who they're blaming. Someone's can be anyone. In a bureaucratic culture, they will make sure it's the right person who gets the blame. So that's the main difference. And this is the kind of place where if you say, I think we have a problem, usually it becomes your problem because you raised it. So they'll say, thanks for raising that, go and fix it. And you're like, I was hoping for some support. That's why I've kind of raised it. So that has some problems too. You tend to, in a bureaucratic culture, have to make sure that the right person is making the decision. And then we have the generative culture. And this is where information flows really freely. You're allowed to go and speak to people outside of your zone. That's OK. It's not frowned on. If you raise a problem, people will thank you for raising it. Hey, thanks for letting us know about that. Let's plug that hole before we have a disaster. And this is the kind of place where you kind of want to be, right? This is where we want to try and get to. This place where we're allowed to talk openly, solve problems together, just kind of get better at getting better, as we say in the DORA community. So how are we going to get there? So culture usually in an organization is changed by putting up posters, right? So you'll walk in the office one day and every pillar will have a poster on saying that you're now an innovative company, right? And you kind of sit at your desk and you stare at the poster. and you walk through the corridors and you see these posters, and then you sit on the toilet and there's a poster on the back of the toilet door. You're now an innovative culture, okay? Job done. But that doesn't actually work. It never works. I worked somewhere once where they put up posters. Their new culture was, we'll do it right, we'll do it once, and we'll do it now. There were pens, there were coasters, there was mouse mats. No one uses mouse mats, but there were mouse mats. All trying to tell us that this is what we're going to do, and nothing changed, okay? So we need to actually do something to bring that culture around. And this is where we need a list of ideas. And this is just one list of ideas. This comes from DORA's research. This is called the DORA core model. And these are all things that statistically have been found to help good things happen. So if you need ideas, these things over here, capabilities, this is where all your ideas are. Now, in an ideal world, you sit down in your continuous improvement process, and you think, what problems are we having? And then you can come to this and go, is there something on this list that will help us fix that problem, right? Not every idea will be on here. Sometimes you'll have to come up with something yourself or look for different material, go back through some of the agile and lean books and things that have been out. There'll be ideas in there as well. But these ones are useful because the numbers tell us that they do help. So this is basically our source of ideas. And we're going to use that to go into this cycle. Now, the idea behind this cycle, it's called the capability culture cycle because those were called capabilities. Capability just means something you can do. And we're going to bring them in here to help us change our culture because we need to take action. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and improve our reliability of software deployments because this is where a lot of trust can be either built or lost in your organization. So when your CD pipelines don't result in working software at the end of every release, people start thinking, these people don't know what they're doing. We can't trust them with this software, right? And usually, it's not your fault that the software is going wrong. There's a whole bunch of other things in the system that are stopping it from working. For example, I was speaking to someone today, and they said, we've got really great deployments to our dev and test environments, but we still have to then use a different process to put the code into production. Right, so every time they do a dev release, every time they do a test release, they are testing this process and making it more and more robust. And then in production, which they do far less often, they're just like doing something different. And so it always goes wrong. Checklists get ticked, but the thing wasn't done. So this is what we're going to start with. Going to improve the deployment pipeline. And this is on the list, right? One of the ways of doing it is automating the deployments, usually like all the way through, not just to dev and test, to production as well. We want this to be tested as much as our software is tested. And that's what we're going to use to start this drive. You can start anywhere, but I work for a company that does deployment automation, so I picked this one. So if we take our deployment automation and our deployments become a non-event, so every time we deploy our software, it just works, the people who aren't technical start seeing the difference, right? And I very often, as my next step, would pick monitoring and observability, because if there is a problem, it's nice if you know about it before anyone else does. So those two things are a good way of starting to build this like trust fund, which is the currency in your business of people thinking these people are doing a good job. And that's important because it's going to start turning this flywheel. So the next thing we can do is completely non-technical, which is now that we've automated being able to get our software through this pipeline, hopefully we can reduce our batch size, right? And this is easy because all you have to do is not do as much stuff before you deploy it, right? So that's super easy. So we can all do that next Monday. Let's go in and do less work before we deploy it. Without the deployment pipeline that does this, it's hard to make the batch sizes smaller because if your deployments take a day, you can't speed that up, right? They're like, well, if it's going to take a whole day, we're not going to do that more than once a month. So we want to make the deployments fast, then we can work in small batches. And small batches are proven to make your software more reliable because you're introducing less change at once. There's far less chance of those changes tripping over each other. There's less merge conflicts. There's lots of happy stuff here. And all of this in turn has given you this currency, this trust fund, and it's super important to use that trust fund to make an ask. So you can prove that you've done something that's made things better. It's now your chance to say, I would like to spend some of this virtual currency, on getting something for us. And again, we're going to kind of go back to the model for this, which is we're going to ask to streamline our change approvals, right? So if there's clipboards, signatures, change approval boards, these kinds of processes, we're going to ask to just dial that down a bit, okay? Like, do we need this level of checking if we've proven that our deployments are now reliable, right? Can we get rid of something from this process? This is really heavily correlated with successful software delivery. So we've done a bunch of things. Some of them are technical, some of them are just working smaller batches. Now we're asking the business to give us something back in order to do even better, right? Because this is going to make you look even more professional than the changes that you made technically. Because this is what's going to help you be more reliable, put things through faster. We're not doing it for speed's sake. It's just the faster deployments reduce risk massively. So that's why we're doing it. So I know that lots of people like saying, agile, twice the work in half the time. It's not really about just like, making the sausage factory go faster. The reason we're doing it is because we kind of want to get feedback from users, and it's useful if that feedback arrives when we can still remember why we actually introduced the change, rather than 6 months later, and there's no willingness at that point to go back and improve the feature based on any feedback. It's just too late. So it's not about flat line speed, it's about getting feedback, changing direction. So yeah, that's the ask that we make of the business. All of these things, hopefully, are making your trust balance go up even faster, because it's a virtuous cycle. So hopefully you're all happy now, right? It's like you're in a generative culture. If only it was that simple, right? So I don't want to sell snake oil. It's kind of a long slog of a process, and the most likely thing that you're going to get out of the back of this is a culture bubble. So you'll have this local improvement where maybe your team is just a nicer place to work. The organization might still be entirely pathological, but just locally you've made an improvement. That might even be enough, right? Isn't it nicer if we just don't dread going to work? There's a small chance that you can grow that bubble to be more teams, maybe even the whole organization, but I'm not going to stand here and promise that that's going to happen, because what usually happens is there will be someone in your team, and it might be you, who is taking a bit more stress in their lives in order to improve the lives of the people around them. And that might not be sustainable. And if they decide that they don't want to do that anymore and they move on, the bubble bursts. And then you kind of like take a few steps back, and it's just, is there someone else who can take on that additional stress and make it happen? They're like holding up an umbrella. So very often it's one of like the tech leads on the team. Sometimes it's your dev manager, but there's someone trying to create that space for you to do this cycle. But if you can keep building that trust, you will make it more permanent for your team, and you have that chance, that roll of the dice, that other teams will want to join you, and the organization improves. So I didn't intend to say as much on the cultural bubble thing, but I have to do a big disclaimer, because culture is really hard. So you can try this, and it may be more difficult than I've made it seem. So one of the things that we can do to try and help this bubble expand and become a permanent fixture is we have to think a little bit like the business people think. They care about these things over here. There's these things called commercial performance and non-commercial performance. Commercial performance is usually money. Non-commercial performance is usually some other goal the company has, which might be saving bees, or it might be just making a car that is world-beating. They'll have some other goal that's a bit more mission-driven. But both of those are positively improved if you can do these things here. And these are the things that are under your control. So you might not be able to get money into your company's bank account. That goal is too far away from what you're doing. But you could definitely do these things. And there's a really tiny arrow on this diagram. I'll point at it, because otherwise you might not see it. It's there. And it's there. It's a little arrow. And it says, if you improve these things, these organizational things are also likely to improve. And this is statistically modeled. So we've got things here like software delivery performance. You may have heard of the DORA 4 keys. They're up here. Basically, it's your ability to get changes through your system without breaking the system is basically how I'd summarize that. And then there's also some reliability numbers in here as well. Can you meet your service level objectives? Do your users agree with your assessment of your ability to meet service level objectives? They're also important. So these metrics here also change sooner. So if you try and watch commercial performance, you might not see any changes for 6 months, 12 months. It's not very useful for feedback loops. You kind of need to know, like if I'm trying to change the temperature of a shower, ideally, as soon as I move the temperature dial, I can feel the temperature of the shower. If there's a big gap between me doing that, I keep burning myself, freezing myself, burning myself, freezing myself. So these aren't very good for feedback cycles. These change a lot sooner. And if you wanted to add something that changes even sooner than these, just developer satisfaction, right? And it can be as simple as a little smiley face on each ticket that you close, right? Each feature that you've committed is now going in. How did you feel? Happy, sad, indifferent? Those will change about 2 weeks before these things will change. So they give you an advance notice to do something about it. So you can usually track all of those numbers in your tools. That's quite common. But I also say, if your tools aren't giving you those numbers, don't spend 6 months trying to get a dashboard in place. Just ask people. Because if you say to someone, how often do you deploy? They can usually tell you, oh, it's weekly, right? So don't spend a long time, if you don't have a tool that gives you these numbers, don't spend a long time trying to create a Power BI dashboard integrated with 15 systems to try and work out how often you deploy or how long your changes take. Just ask people. And there's various tools out there that will give you the questions to ask. We have a deployment capability assessment which asks these questions, and you just say, you know, you can either say, the last deployment, what was the oldest change in it, right? Just look at the last one. Oh, it was 2 weeks, right? Good, there you go. You know your change times now, right? It's 2-week lead time for changes, from commit to when you deploy it. And this will give you some recommendations of things that you can do to try and improve those numbers. One of the things we found in our research that we did was if you have a deployment gatekeeper, that's going to seriously hinder your performance. So organizations that had one person who was allowed to approve deployments and only one person performed far worse than organizations who built a little team of people with the authority to press the button and say, we can deploy. So if you're the only deployer, try and find someone else. Could be simple things as if you're on holiday, no deployments happen for 2 weeks, right? That can't be a good thing. So, but this tool will tell you, it will give you recommendations for that. So hopefully I've got some time for questions because I want to get into your thoughts. Quick summary is, build trust. Trust is really central to changing culture because most of the things that make culture bad were put in after something went terribly wrong. I worked at a company who was an e-commerce company, and they had a bug. They had a bit of JavaScript running on their site to truncate descriptions on the products. And if the spaces happened to be exactly at the truncation length, there was a bug that meant the JavaScript went into an infinite loop. And we found this in December, and the same day I had a fix, and I wasn't allowed to deploy it because they'd done a deployment in December once and it had hurt their Christmas sales. So they left a bug on the system until the end of February that was stopping people from being able to use the site at all because they were so scared because of that past failure. So that's what we want to break. We want to find all of those things that were introduced because of some mess up, had to censor myself there, some mess up that happened in the past, and we need to try and undo the ones that are not healthy. So, stuck some links up here. My design team will not thank me for deleting their theme and because I had too much to put on. The DORA community, we discuss this stuff all the time, and you're very welcome to come along and join those discussions. It's a good merge of people who are kind of academic and researchers and folks like yourself who are actually doing this work. So your practitioner perspective will help the researchers look at the right things. So come and join us. That's where you can find that deployment capability assessment. And you can connect to me if you've got questions, but I'd love to hear your questions now.